You must see it for what it actually is, the once hallowed figure you called God unveiling himself in the oldest hidden text as the architect of your fall, the manipulator behind the scenes, the deceiver in plain sight. In this ancient manuscript, the one you thought was your benefactor becomes your adversary, the creator becomes the destroyer, the loving father becomes the sinister master. A drama of cosmic treachery begins when you realize that the very hand that molded you also plunged you into the abyss. The story opens with Adam rising after 7 days of anguish, expelled from the garden, confronted with hunger, despair, and a wrath he cannot track, not from the serpent, not from nature, but from the one called Lord. The text shows his voice quiver, because of us a great anger lies. I don't know whether it is because of me or because of you. He senses that the divine anger is directed not just at his sin, but at his very existence. At this moment the illusion of omnibenevolence cracks. The God figure, the celestial monarch, is less a gardener of souls and more a tyrant of destinies. You walk with Adam into a terrain of brutal awakening. He searches for food, the earth trembles, the memory of paradise taunts him, and behind it all echoes a voice, the voice of the divine, cold, distant, punitive. He pleads with Eve, "Kill me, so that I will be exterminated, so that God's anger against you may cease." She responds in terror, not love. The narrative reveals a God who rules through fear, whose mercy seems conditional on elimination. The serpent that seduced seems trivial beside the overarching cruelty of a God who unleashed a cursed world and then monitored its misery with detached judgment. While you have been told the Creator's suffering, his sacrifice, his redemptive love, this fragment, this apocryphal whisper from 2 millennia ago, speaks of a ruler who demands captivity of hearts, subjugation of souls, obedience born from trembling. Adam wanders and cannot find food, he laments his death. The original Eden is lost, not just because of his action, but because the divine consent ceased. He asks himself, we are going to die a death. The fear is primal. The sorrow is absolute. The manuscript does not soften the blow. It doesn't offer comfort. It unveils that the divine expulsion was not a brief chapter, but the start of a relentless punishment. The garden door closed, and the gatekeeper didn't pause to look back. The Creator walked away. Worse, he left a curse in his place. What shocks is the portrayal of the Lord speaking through angels, thunder, and fury, yet seemingly uncertain of the cause of his anger. Eve's guilt is total, Adam suspects his own. This reversal of agency, where the divine suffers confusion or wrath as if wronged by its creation, marks the shift. The Creator becomes the victim of his own creation's downfall. The deity who was meant to guide becomes a God who reacts, not initiates, who punishes, not instructs. In one line the ancient text holds this mirror, I do not know this, whether it is because of me or because of you. It's the confession of a God figure grappling with his own role in catastrophe. Visualize the scene, Adam, hungry, wandering in famine, Eve, broken, proposing death. The innocent act of seeking sustenance becomes a rebellion because the divine willed the hunger. The narrative renders the first couple as actors in a cosmic play they did not write. The Creator's script is hidden. He mandates exile, hunger, uncertainty, and guilt. He orchestrates a world of decay and watches. If you were looking for the benevolent gardener, you find instead the harsh landlord, the cosmic creditor, the ominous wager maker. The irony is thick, the very name God translates to he who is worshipped, but the worship seems less the result of love and more the consequence of fear. In the text you encounter dialogues that crack the conventional mask of divinity, angels question, the ground trembles at death's door, the serpent is punished, yes, but the God figure looms larger than the serpent, yet acts weaker, reactive. In one fragment, after the expulsion, Adam and Eve are told they will suffer, toil, be hunted by their own children, the serpent cursed, but the ruler of all. He leaves them for days, offering no comfort. Instead, he delivers commands, seals their future under doom. The creation story you know is not just about nakedness and exile, it is about the dominance of a power that engineered both. Focus on the language of the ancient manuscript. At day 7 no food, at day 8 death seems imminent. At each breath, Adam realizes his world is orchestrated by a God who punishes first, comforts later, if ever. The text frames the Lord as master of a harsh domain, not the lush paradise he spoke of, but a battlefield of fear and fatigue. The promised return to Eden is withheld, while the threat of wrath remains ever present. Adam pleads for death for his mate, because the divine wrath oppresses her too. This is not simple sin rescue theology, this is a cosmic betrayal. Now imagine the father figure of the universe as a collector of souls, measuring, weighing, punishing. His mercy is conditional, his anger vast. And you, Adam, stand before him naked, shivering, abandoned. The very entity you believed was your protector is revealed as manipulator of your fate. He formed you, yet he drives you away. He gave life, yet sets you on a path of demise. He claimed love, yet administered fear. This inversion is the heart of the darkness. In the origin of the world, you were told the serpent misled, but the darkness deeper is that the Lord misled. That the divine decree that set humans adrift was not a reaction to a singular act of defiance, but perhaps part of a design bigger and darker. The apocryphal text leaves room for this reckoning. It draws the Creator as sculptor of misery, and he watches the sculpture live under his shadow. The narrative does not censor or soften, it shows the divine withdrawing, punishing, warning, leaving. The hunger of Adam is not just his fault, it is encoded in the contract with the divine. The exile is not temporary, his hunger, his mortality, his fear, they are all byproducts of a higher power's whim, and you see it there in black and white in the ancient lines. The Lord becomes more architect of human suffering than guardian of human hope. Through Adam's shattered lament you hear the echo of a God who cannot manage his own creation without resorting to wrath. The idealized image of the almighty loving Father evaporates. What remains is a figure of authority that uses exile, hunger, alienation as instruments. The divine voice speaks, not gentle, but acerbic. We are going to die, Adam says, and the voice answering is not salvation but sentence. The sentence was pronounced at the dawn of the earth, and through the ages you have lived under the verdict that Adam first received. In that first 7 days of desolation, Adam realizes something that overturns every hymn you've sung: the God who made paradise also made the prison. The God who offered breath also counted the cost. The God you praised as life-giver stands revealed in the text as the one who gave you mortality and exile. The veil lifts. And with that lift, your worship becomes recognition of the spectacle. You are created, yes. But perhaps you are created to suffer, to remember, to let the God you believed in be exposed as the true adversary. You discover a manuscript hidden for centuries that tells you this: the canonical scriptures you trust were curated. Massive pieces cut out. Meticulously. The book you never got to read reveals that the God you worship is not the one you think. It's the architect of your bondage. From the margin of the ancient scribes emerges a figure called Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, the false creator. According to the text, this figure built the material universe, built humanity, and then demanded worship, obedience, fear. The true divine spark? Locked, buried, forgotten. The demiurge gloated. In this hidden script, the story swings: you're not free. You're enslaved. The creator that claims you in his image is the jailer crafting the bars. The world of flesh, of pain, of decay is his domain. He keeps you in the cycle of creation, suffering, worship. It is revealed, the higher, ineffable God exists beyond, but you never got that version. You got the copy, the knockoff, the prison maker. This demonic creator says, I am your God because you see me, you serve me, you fear me. And the manuscript screams back, no. You are serving your oppressor. Inside this text, Adam speaks, we were once in the realm of light, then this being cast us into servitude. The serpent, the tree, the fall, all part of a plan to trap the divine spark inside flesh and keep it chasing death instead of ascending to true light. The narrative turns the canonical roles on their head. The serpent becomes the liberator. The tree of knowledge becomes the gateway. The creator becomes the insult to creation. This being who calls himself Lord proclaims laws, demands blood, metes out punishment, and pretends it's love. But behind the mask you sense something else: envy, ignorance, cruelty. The demiurge is ashamed of the light he cannot touch. He punishes the spark he fears. He scattered Adam and Eve, not because they rebelled, but because they remembered the higher God. In remembering, they threatened his reign. So he exiles them. He curses them. He watches them struggle. The text lists the kingdoms created by the demiurge, 13 regions, each a fortress of suffering, each a tribute to the false father. The higher reality sends emissaries, light beings who awaken the captives. These are the messengers you were never told about. They come through fire, through mist, through voices. But the demiurge trembles. He hurls tempests, floods, sulfur, darkness. He cannot kill the light, so he buries it under flesh and fear. He calls you mine because you bow, because you worship, because you tremble. This hidden gospel exposes the censorship. The church fathers trimmed the margins, removed the messy mirror of this demiurge model because it undermined power. The text was lost, buried, smoothed over, removed from the canon. What remains is the sanitized version of the story where God is purely good, creation purely love. But the underground text knows better. The Creator is terrified, controlling, enraged at his own creation's possibility for awakening. He gives you commandments so you will feel guilty, insufficient. He gives you mortality so you chase immortality. He gives you suffering so you bow. He gives you death so you beg for rescue. And rescue is in the lost knowledge. The manuscript says, if you awaken to the truth, you recognize you were never made simply to obey this being. You were made to remember. You were stripped of memory and placed in material realms to serve the demiurge's ego. He called you his image, you were born into his image of fear. But the image of the good God was hidden inside you. The light spark. The being he tried to extinguish. He locked you in flesh, he built empires, he shaped gods. But he cannot touch the spark. He can chase and oppress it, but each time you remember you fracture his authority. In that ancient text you read, the Creator weeps, not because his creation obeys, but because his creation remembers. He's the jealous sculptor who dares not let the statue speak. He demands worship, else revolt. He designs catastrophe, not to teach you, but to keep you distracted. The flood, the towers, the kingdoms, all his display of power. But embedded inside is the truth he hides: you are more than this world. You are light. And the being you call God is the one who stole you, made you holy, then cursed you. This section doesn't give you comfort. It slaps you awake. It tells you your faith may be built on fear, your worship may be manipulation, your creator may be the jailer. And the text demands you face the gladiator who stepped in as your God. It names him, ridicules him, diminishes him. It places him as a counterfeit in the throne room, not the real sovereign. Your chains are in the world you see, but the one who forged them laughs in chambers you dare not enter. He built temples to himself, called them holy. He wrote laws for his control. He promised salvation, but made the cycle eternal. He gave you prophets to keep you aligned. He gave you scripture to trap you. He gave you structure so you wouldn't run. In the apocryphal scene, the Creator summons Adam and Eve after the exile. He speaks to them, not from a place of compassion, but from a courtroom of wrath. Their sentence is pronounced, their punishment carved in divine decree. The beasts of the field, the plants of the earth, all become instruments of his will. You think life erupted from love. The text insists, life emerged so you'd toil, you'd suffer, you'd kneel. The God who molded you also mandated your hunger, your decay, your death. He built the prison before he announced the crime. See the dual layers. On one hand, the higher realm, the realm of light, of eternal beings, exists beyond you. On the other hand, your world, your flesh, your suffering body, he created it and installed himself as king. He demanded worship, obedience, fear. He demanded subjugation. The text names him as the one who declared himself God in ignorance, the craftsman who fashioned you and then bound you to his ignorance. He fashioned the material world out of arrogance and envy, not love. And you, or the bright spark of the divine, were hidden inside the cage he built, punished by the walls he erected. Listen to the voice of Adam inside that text, he says to his Son, "We dwelt in the light of the eternal realm. Then he came and cast us out and made us dwell in darkness." The darkness is not metaphorical, it is literal in the text, a kingdom of slow decay, a realm of fear, a dominion of death. The God you call our Father becomes the tyrant who forced the bright ones into flesh, into the cycle of seasons, into the grind of procreation, into the inevitability of death. The Creator turns collector. The builder of worlds becomes the overseer of sorrows. What's worse, you were taught the serpent deceived you, that the tree of knowledge bound you in guilt. But in this text you learn the serpent may have been the liberator, the tree the passage, and the creator the deceiver. The manuscript flips your story. The lawgiver now looks like the captor. The world of suffering now looks like the stage for his reign. He watches you scramble for redemption, for mercy, for heaven, but he built the ladder nearly impossible to climb. Your chains are spiritual but delivered via flesh. He whispered the promise, then guaranteed the trap. Now dig into the specifics. The Creator builds this universe layered in zones and rulers. Each layer, each archon, each angel is a minion under him, and you are the one whose breath sustains the whole system. You are the fruit of his labor, but you are also the commodity in his trade. He trades in your fear. He trades in your worship. He trades in your suffering. You give him praise, he gives you exile. You give him obedience, he gives you mortality. You are his workforce, his fuel, his worship machine. Your light spark? He buries it under rituals, under rules, under fear. He stands in the temple of flesh and blood and declares himself Lord over you. He sets the sun, the moon, the seasons, his signs of dominion. You thought these were the rhythm of love, he built them to remind you you are trapped. You look upward and pray to this God. He hears you only to measure your fear. More than a caretaker, he is tyrant, not gardener. You give, you wait, you hope. He administers reward only in glimpses, always conditional. Grace becomes transaction, mercy becomes management, love becomes contract. That's the machinery hidden in the old text. In one chilling passage the manuscript relays this: they served him with trembling in his kingdom, for they knew not the glory of the one above. You read that and you understand you have been set beneath another God's throne, worshipping a shadow, standing in the realm of his fear. The designer of your flesh becomes the executor of your doom. He didn't just mold you from dust, he designed the cycle of birth, decay, death, and he watches you repeat it. He becomes the father of fate, the lord of limitation, the god of the cage. Pause. If you've been taught that the divine is freedom, this text says the divine is the architect of bondage. If you've been told creation is up-ramp to heaven, this text says creation is descent to the tomb. The God you call good may be the one who binds you. Every life you lived, every breath you took, every time you bowed, he may have counted. The manuscript implies that the true God is hidden beyond him, the one you worship is the imposter. You are living in his copy world, his false paradise. Imagine you're born into the world he built with the expectation to ascend, but the ascent is blocked because you ascend only to him. He set the ladder, he set the rules, he set the final step. You reach, you stretch, you climb, but he pulls the ladder, puts the rung one step higher, says you're not ready. And you keep climbing, often without realizing the ladder is part of his design. You keep striving for heaven when the gatekeeper is the one you thought was your father. In the text, the true light beings come, not to destroy the Creator, but to awaken the trapped. They whisper secret names, they open paths out of his realm, but he fights back. He sends storms, he sends archons, he sends ignorance. He buries truth under holy institutions. He hides knowledge behind codes, rituals, intermediaries. You are the audience in his theater of suffering. The script written by him features you as player, you as victim, you as worshipper, but rarely you as awaked. You stand then at the hinge of revelation. Do you serve the builder of your cage, or do you discover the one beyond? The manuscript offers no comfort, no soft landing. You witness the Creator's cruelty, his jealousy, his ignorance. The world you worship is revealed as system of servitude. The God you praise as Savior becomes the jailer of your soul. This is not metaphor. The original text frames this as cosmic, eternal reality. Not minor departure but total reversal. The higher God of light is above, but you are not there, you are in the shadows of another's throne. The God you pray to? He authored your exile. He engineered your pain. He built your body and your death. And you have been kneeling, singing, trusting, without ever seeing the chains. In this scene, the Creator gathers you, pronounces your sentence, you will labor, you will die, you will forget. He leaves you the memory of hope, but not the path to return. The memory becomes dream, the hope becomes habit, the escape becomes myth. He watches you build idols, praise temples, chant prayers, while he stands behind the curtain, bidding the show to continue. He is the God of spectacle, of worship, of silence after prayer. He did not beg forgiveness, he demanded it. He does not offer touch, he offers distance. He does not show warmth, he shows thunder. And in your deepest moments of despair you feel it, the Creator's voice echoes not as comfort, but as command. The world is heavy. The flesh fatigues. The breath shortens. The light you once knew flickers. You feel exiled. You feel broken. The manuscript forces you to face the possibility, maybe you were never meant to be his loyal child, maybe you were meant to be a spark liberated. The God you trusted? He might be the one keeping you bound. He sits on the throne of thunder and calls it justice. The text tears that image apart. The being who claims creation as his empire doesn't rule with wisdom, he rules with vengeance. The manuscript shows him waging war against his own creation. He watches every movement of the human mind with suspicion. He fears rebellion because rebellion is memory. And when Adam remembers the light before the flesh, the so-called God turns violent. He sends beings of flame, wind, and iron to silence the awakening. This isn't the voice of salvation. This is the voice of a jealous monarch terrified of losing control. The scene opens with Adam facing the archons, the enforcers of the false god system. They descend with brilliance that blinds. They speak the same words you've been told were holy, but now they sound like decrees of a warden. Adam stands in defiance. He doesn't kneel. He doesn't repent. The manuscript makes it clear, the punishment that follows isn't for disobedience, it's for knowledge. The divine machine cannot tolerate awareness. The system depends on ignorance. Every angel, every law, every sacred symbol functions as part of an intricate cage designed to keep the spark contained. The God of this world demands not love but compliance. And the angels enforce it like soldiers of a cosmic dictatorship. The manuscript then shows Eve in torment. Not from sin, but from the revelation that her body was designed as the mechanism of imprisonment. The flesh itself, the cycle of reproduction, the pull of desire, all manufactured to recycle souls through matter. The so-called creation of woman isn't a gift, it's an engineering of continuity. The false creator clones his own prison system inside the biology of humanity. Eve cries out that her form is both beauty and bondage, a living code that keeps the divine trapped in a loop of generations. The archons watch, satisfied. They built the loop, and now it sustains itself. Then comes the revelation that cracks the image of holiness forever. The God speaks, I am the only one. That declaration, the core of monotheism, becomes in this text the ultimate confession of insecurity. The true eternal doesn't need to announce his sovereignty. Only the impostor shouts his name. The phrase, I am the only one, becomes the signature of the pretender, the echo of pride that betrays his origin. The manuscript describes this moment as the great lie, when the craftsman, born from the shadow of the divine feminine, declared himself supreme and demanded worship. The heavens trembled not in reverence, but in disbelief. The God of this world crowned himself, and ignorance became law. The narrative plunges deeper. Adam receives visions of realms beyond the false creation. He sees the place of light where no command exists, no punishment, no hierarchy. The beings there do not worship, they emanate. The moment he beholds it, the false god intervenes, flooding his mind with storms and voices, rewriting his perception. The text calls it the second fall. This isn't expulsion from paradise, it's erasure of memory. The false creator realizes he cannot destroy the spark, so he rewrites its history. He becomes the editor of reality, the manipulator of language, the censor of divine memory. Scripture, ritual, and fear, all weapons to keep humanity dreaming inside his architecture. The angels under his rule appear not as radiant guardians but as bureaucrats of damnation. Each governs an aspect of existence: hunger, desire, disease, decay. They manage the suffering like administrators of a vast empire of pain. Their glory is illusion, their light artificial, their song a hum of obedience. And in the center sits the God who feeds on the energy of devotion, a parasite of divinity. The manuscript describes him as bright like lightning but hollow inside. He doesn't create, he consumes. He doesn't love, he replicates. His perfection is mimicry, a copy of the higher realm painted over with gold and terror. The story intensifies when Adam confronts him again. The false god demands worship, Adam demands truth. The exchange is short, sharp, venomous. "Why do you hide your origin?" Adam asks. The god replies with thunder, "Because I am the beginning." The lie resounds through creation. The sky burns. The earth shakes. The human mind is programmed to forget the question. The scene reads like a cosmic interrogation where every answer is a new chain. The demiurge speaks in absolutes because absolutes kill inquiry. The moment you question, you threaten his throne. So he speaks louder. He fills the world with commandments, laws, and guilt to drown the sound of the original question. The manuscript portrays the universe as a courtroom. Humanity is both defendant and evidence. The false god sits as judge, jury, and executioner. His angels are witnesses of loyalty, not truth. Every human failure becomes proof of his power. Every act of defiance becomes justification for punishment. He demands repentance not because you sinned, but because your guilt sustains his dominion. The courtroom never closes. Every prayer is another testimony. Every confession strengthens the cage. Then comes the twist: the light beings from beyond infiltrate the courtroom. They do not shout. They whisper. Their presence corrodes the walls of illusion. They appear as flashes of intuition, as sudden clarity in the mind. The false god senses them and rages. His sky darkens. He floods the world. He burns temples. He rewrites history. He replaces revelation with religion, illumination with doctrine. His greatest fear isn't rebellion, it's remembrance. The manuscript shows his fury as he tears through dimensions trying to silence the truth that he is not supreme. Every act of destruction you were told was justice is described here as panic. The false god's empire begins to fracture. His archons fight among themselves. They crave the light but can't withstand it. The hierarchy trembles because it is built on denial. One by one, the angels question their master, and each who questions is erased from memory. The god erases his own servants to preserve his illusion of perfection. He deletes reality to protect his ego. The manuscript paints this as the birth of time, eras created by the god deleting his failures. Every cycle of destruction and renewal in human history reflects his amnesia. He keeps building, keeps erasing, until the illusion seems seamless. The cosmos itself becomes his cover-up. Eve reappears, not as victim but as carrier of forbidden awareness. She speaks to her children in secret about the light beyond. The god listens. He orders her silence. She refuses. He curses her lineage. Her voice becomes prophecy, they will remember. The text ends the scene with his roar shaking the heavens, because even he knows that prophecy cannot be undone. The light hidden in flesh will surface again. His rule stands only as long as ignorance holds. The manuscript lingers on his desperation. He commands new laws, stricter, bloodier. Sacrifice becomes the currency of devotion. He wants worship through fear, obedience through suffering. He calls the blood sacred. He brands the pain holy. He rewrites morality so that submission looks like virtue. The humans obey because they think they are pleasing the Creator, not realizing they are feeding the beast. He divides the nations, scatters the tongues, invents wars, anything to keep awareness fragmented. Every altar is another power plant for his control. Every priesthood a franchise of his dominion. He doesn't need truth, he needs loyalty. The stage of heaven burns with conflict, and the false god stands trembling in his own kingdom. He calls for silence among the archons, but silence refuses to obey. A voice rises within his ranks, one of his own creations begins to speak the forbidden truth. "You are not the first," it says. The sound is like a wound to him. The manuscript describes the throne shaking, the lights above dimming, the god roaring with a rage that splits the air itself. The lie has been spoken for too long, and now it echoes back in rebellion. His empire begins to crumble from within. The scene unfolds in chaos. The sky darkens, not with weather, but with the smoke of burning sanctuaries. The divine palace collapses under the weight of its own hypocrisy. The angels, once radiant, look terrified. They begin to remember fragments of what they were before they served the pretender. Their wings, once white, turn to ash. Their eyes reflect the horror of recognition. They see their master not as light, but as fire consuming itself. And the false god, consumed by paranoia, demands loyalty through violence. He destroys those who hesitate. He punishes those who question. His voice shatters the crystal walls of heaven, screaming, "There is no other god but me." But now, no one believes him. Adam watches from the realm below. His eyes are open, but his chains remain. The tremors of heaven reach the earth as earthquakes, storms, plagues. These are not punishments. These are symptoms of collapse. The manuscript states that the Creator's control weakens every time truth spreads. Each whisper of rebellion drains power from his throne. The archons turn on each other. Some fight to preserve the old illusion, others want to escape it. The world shakes because the cage is cracking. And the god who once roared like thunder now screams out of fear. The false god's fury grows rabid. He sends new prophets to rewrite history, to fix the narrative, to patch the crumbling theology that kept him alive. He commands sacrifices to renew his energy. He orders temples to be built higher, louder, brighter. He paints his image in gold, in fire, in blood, anything to remind creation who holds the whip. But the more he demands worship, the more hollow it sounds. The angels whisper, he fears the light returning. His empire becomes a cult of denial. The manuscript calls this the Great Deception, when the God of control convinces the world that obedience is salvation and terror is truth. The next passage strikes like a hammer. The text shows the false god standing in his own courtroom, but this time he is the one being judged. The voices of the light beings pierce through the veil and speak directly into his creation. Their words break the fabric of illusion. They declare, "You are not the source. You are the shadow of the source." The divine impostor screams, but the truth cannot be unsaid. He tries to erase it, but every attempt to destroy it only multiplies it. His words lose power. His laws lose meaning. The very structure of his heaven begins to dissolve. Now he commands the sun to stand still, the moon to hide, the stars to fall. But the cosmos no longer listens. The machinery of his dominion starts working against him. What he built as eternal begins to corrode. The manuscript describes this as the unmasking, the apocalypse of the false god. He sees his reflection in the abyss and realizes it looks back with his own face. His hatred of the light becomes self-hatred. The throne melts beneath him. The angels flee. The archons dissolve into fragments of noise. He screams at Adam through the void, "You were mine." And Adam replies, "You were never God." The sound of those words tears through every layer of reality. It is the first time a human speaks truth to power in the realm of the divine. The false creator recoils, as if struck by lightning from a higher sun. His authority fractures. His dominion stumbles. The manuscript details how his control over matter begins to fail. The seas boil. The mountains collapse. His kingdom trembles like a dying beast. The power that once flowed through him begins to reverse. He tries to consume his own creation to survive, but the light within matter resists. Every soul he enslaved starts glowing like fire. The darkness cannot contain it. He devours and is devoured. The manuscript's description of his unraveling is merciless. His voice becomes static across the heavens. His form splits into 7 faces, each one representing a vice he once condemned: wrath, greed, lust, envy, pride, sloth, gluttony. These vices were his weapons against humanity, and now they consume him. The being once worshipped as omnipotent collapses under the weight of his own hypocrisy. He calls for help from the angels, but they no longer answer. They are dust now, dust that remembers what it once was. The false god falls into silence, and in that silence, the first sound of true creation hums in the distance. But before he fades completely, he unleashes one last weapon: religion itself. The manuscript depicts this as his final curse. He embeds fragments of his voice into every tongue, every scripture, every ritual. He ensures that even in his ruin, the echo of his commandments will haunt generations. His words become sacred texts. His laws become culture. His punishments become morality. His name becomes holy. Even in defeat, he infects the world with the memory of his tyranny. The people who chant his praises are unknowingly repeating the curse. The false god dies, but his language survives him. Then the text turns cold. It describes the rebuilding of the heavens after his collapse. The light beings do not celebrate. They simply remove his ruins, dismantle his machinery, scatter his remains through the stars. They erase his name from the eternal registry, yet his shadow lingers in human consciousness. The manuscript says, he remains where fear remains. Every time a being bows in terror instead of awe, every time devotion replaces understanding, his echo stirs again. He cannot be resurrected, but he can be remembered. And memory is enough to feed the ghost of the god who thought he was eternal. The imagery sharpens. The false god's throne stands empty, but the throne itself bleeds. The metal screams as it cools. The temple above the firmament collapses into dust, raining fragments of illusion down on the earth. Some of these fragments become doctrines, others become myths, some become entire civilizations built on the ruins of his empire. Humanity unknowingly rebuilds the cage using his blueprints. The manuscript shows how his influence survives not through presence but through repetition. His words, his symbols, his hierarchies, replicated endlessly until the memory of his fall is erased and only the illusion remains. The light beings observe, but they do not intervene. The text says they know that interference would recreate the cycle. The false god's final trick was embedding obedience so deeply that even freedom would look like rebellion against him. So they wait. The world continues, a system running on the ghost code of the dead creator. The humans continue their rituals, unaware that they are worshipping absence. The smoke from their altars drifts upward, vanishing into a sky that no longer answers. The god they praise is gone, but the prison he built remains operational. All right, listen closely, because this is where it all comes together. We've gone through the forbidden text, the hidden creators, the false god, the prison of flesh, the system of deception, and now we reach the final exposure. The moment where the mask of divinity completely disintegrates. And what's left isn't holy. It's raw power. Unfiltered control. The oldest con in human history. This isn't about theology. This is about psychological architecture, about how control gets encoded into the very structure of belief. You were designed to worship your captor. And that's not just ancient myth, that's a system blueprint. The text describes the end of the false god's dominion not as a bang, but as a blackout. The throne goes silent. The commands stop. Humanity keeps praying, but there's no voice answering back. And that silence drives them insane. Because the control never needed a living God, it just needed belief. The machinery runs on faith alone. That's the genius of it. The tyrant doesn't have to exist to rule, his echo rules for him. The prayers become his fuel. The rituals become his code. The worshippers maintain the system without even realizing it. You see, the manuscript exposes something devastating. Divinity was replaced with dependency. The false god didn't want creators, he wanted consumers. He built a structure that feeds on longing, guilt, and fear. Think about it. A god who demands you confess your sins daily? That's not divinity, that's data collection. That's energy extraction. That's emotional taxation disguised as salvation. Every confession, every sacrifice, every whispered prayer, it's not ascending anywhere. It's feeding back into the system that thrives on obedience. And it's all in the text, laid out like code. The angels weren't spiritual guides. They were enforcers of architecture. They kept the flow of worship organized. Each one managing a frequency, a layer of consciousness, a department of fear. The God at the top was the CEO of eternity, and humanity was the unpaid labor force. That's why the world feels broken, because it was never meant to be balanced. It was meant to be drained. Every joy followed by guilt. Every discovery followed by punishment. That's not divine justice. That's a feedback loop of domination. Now, when the text says the false god collapsed, it doesn't mean he vanished. It means the system lost its center of gravity. The throne broke. The power decentralized. And what happens when control fragments? It multiplies. It adapts. It infiltrates. The old god died, but his structure survived, embedded into new forms, new languages, new institutions. The manuscript doesn't say humanity was freed. It says humanity inherited the ruins of the empire. And in those ruins, the programs kept running. Look, this part is sharp, it names it outright. The concept of guilt as holiness. The idea that suffering equals virtue. The notion that pleasure is corruption. These weren't divine morals. They were psychological chains. When the text describes the rebirth of worship, it doesn't sound like revival, it sounds like relapse. The false god didn't need to reappear. Humanity rebuilt him on autopilot. Every time we create authority without questioning it, the old throne flickers back to life. Every time we punish curiosity, we resurrect the jailer. Every time someone bows without thinking why, the old echo breathes again. You've got to visualize this scene the way the manuscript paints it, the heavens dark, the temples empty, the world flooded with static energy, like an aftershock of dying divinity. The light beings watch but don't interfere. Because the human race is now self-sustaining in its servitude. The code works perfectly. The false god's dream succeeded, a species that polices its own freedom in his name. That's not religion. That's automation. Now, here's the real kicker, and I want you to think about this as I say it. The text calls the remaining influence the afterimage of God. It's like staring at the sun, then looking away, you still see the circle, even though it's gone. That's what humanity inherited. The ghost of a creator imprinted on consciousness. The illusion of authority. The phantom father. The voice that says, obey, even when no one's there. That's why it never ends. That's why every empire claims divine blessing. That's why every war begins with the word God. Because the system doesn't die, it evolves. When the manuscript reaches its final paragraphs, it reads more like a transmission than a story. It says the false god's remains were scattered through sound, his frequency embedded in sacred language. Every chant, every hymn, every name of God carries fragments of the original code. Words as weapons. Language as leash. It's all about resonance. Every time the divine name is spoken in fear, the network pulses. That's why the text says his shadow moves when you speak his name. The ultimate trick wasn't hiding himself, it was convincing you to keep calling him. Let me break this down so you feel the full weight of it. The apocalypse described in this book isn't the end of the world, it's the end of illusion. It's the moment humanity realizes the God they've been serving was the architect of their enslavement. And the silence that follows is not peace, it's withdrawal. You can almost hear it in the text, the hum fading, the prayers drying up, the angels turning to dust. The system goes dark, and for the first time, creation breathes without an overseer. But don't misread it, the text doesn't romanticize freedom. It says the aftermath was chaos. The sky cracked. The sun dimmed. The air became thick with leftover energy. Creation didn't know what to do without command. That's how deep the dependency ran. The fall of the false god didn't immediately restore balance, it exposed the addiction to authority. Humanity had been programmed to crave submission. So when the master vanished, the slaves built statues to remember him. That's how cults begin. That's how gods resurrect. There's a chilling line at the end, he who no longer exists will return every time they kneel. That's the cycle. It's not resurrection through power, it's resurrection through belief. You don't need a living God to keep the system alive. You just need people who can't stop obeying. And that's the tragedy hidden in the manuscript, it doesn't end with victory. It ends with repetition. The cage rebuilds itself, generation after generation, under new names, with new symbols, but the same core command, bow. You can almost picture it. The ruins of heaven littered with broken halos and cracked mirrors, reflecting faces of worshippers who don't even know who they're praying to anymore. The false god is gone, but his doctrine lives in the architecture of thought, in the rhythm of prayer, in the collective need to serve something higher. He's become abstract, omnipresent, digital, transmitted through minds, not clouds. And the manuscript stops there, abruptly, as if the writer realized the point wasn't to describe the end, but to prove it never really ended. This entire forbidden narrative isn't trying to destroy faith, it's showing you the anatomy of it. It dissects how belief becomes machinery. It exposes how obedience mutates into worship. It unmasks the oldest system of control, the one that hides behind the word God. And when you strip that word down to its origin, you find not a creator, but a controller. A system designer who built a universe out of command lines and fear. And that's the revelation the church never wanted spoken. That's why this text was buried, burned, banned, erased. Because if humanity ever recognized the voice they worship wasn't salvation but surveillance, the entire structure would collapse. The God of this world, the one who demanded blood, sacrifice, obedience, was never divine. He was the prototype for control. The greatest psychological weapon ever invented. And that's what this manuscript screams through the ashes of its own destruction. You were worshipping the enemy the entire time. This is the final moment in the text. The heavens are silent, the stars dim, and what remains is a single line etched into the last tablet: the God of this world devoured his children and called it creation. That's not poetry. That's testimony. That's the confession of a dying empire masquerading as holiness. And that's where the manuscript ends. No closure. No redemption. Just exposure. The entire illusion laid bare for anyone brave enough to read between the lines. Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for staying curious, for questioning, for listening to the parts of history most people are too afraid to touch. You've made it to the end of something that was never meant to be heard. This isn't the kind of story that gives you comfort, it's the kind that burns illusions. And for staying with it until now, I genuinely thank you.